Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden. We're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg, the Swedish craft beer capital, and we're going to have a look at another beer from a brewery who you've seen me review a good number of things from before. And this is one that I'm really excited about actually, because I've been hoping that this brewery would do one of these for quite a little while. It's one of my favourite styles of beer. So for this review then, we are going to go to Stigbergets Bryggeri and we're having a look at the double yellow line today, which is a 9% IPA, but this time it is a West Coast double IPA. So yeah, if you've been watching my other Stigbergets reviews, I think I've complained about 100 times at least for these guys to produce a proper old school West Coast IPA. So I'm really hoping that this one is not a letdown. I'm hoping that this is going to be a very nice beer. So yeah, this one I think will be very interesting. This beer was released on the 1st of May, I think it was, or was it that date? But it was released in the May lot of the Local to Småskaligt assortment from Stigbergets here in Sweden. I think it had been available from Glassbanken a little bit before that as well, actually, maybe about 2-3 weeks before. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. I think this one should be really quite interesting. So yeah, let's see how we go with this. A nice big 9% big beast of a beer, and I'm hoping that it's properly old school with a nice kind of sweet caramelly base. I've noticed that with a lot of the kind of West Coast IPAs these days, or West Coast IPAs, they tend to be very light and more biscuity, and they're just nowhere near as dank and bitter and things as the West Coast IPAs like Torpedo and things like that used to be. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. I'm really curious to see how this turns out. So yeah, let's see how we get on then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've told you before, are based in Gothenburg, and it was founded by Nils Hulkrantz and Richard Simonsson, and this pair own two bars that share the one kitchen. This is the Bar Kino and the Hagabions Cafe, which are located on Linnegatan in the city, and both of these opened back in 2007. And the building in which you'll find these is actually an independent cinema. And I didn't know this until I actually went and visited it. You can go and have a little look at my out and about video that I made at the Bar Kino. So basically this is the kind of unofficial, the Bar Kino and the Hagabions Cafe. It's the sort of unofficial tap room of Stigbergets and of OO Brewing in Gothenburg actually. But originally the idea was to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, but this led to them kegging the beers and selling it onto other pubs, and then eventually to bottling the beers, which began back in November of 2014. So the original beers that they were brewing were mainly English and German styles, but of course they really made their name when they started focusing on the more hoppy American styles of beer. The original head brewer was Ole Andersson, who is the co-owner of OO Brewing these days, and he was replaced in 2017 by Barnaby Struve, who was vice president at Three Floyds for a period of time, and he has since moved on as well. But they've recently opened up a new brewery at Partihallarna in Gothenburg, where they brew 5,000 litre batches at a time, and they're working on some sour beers as well. But that said, there hasn't been a sour beer released through Systembolaget from Stigbergets in a little while actually. I'm not sure what the reason for that is. But they also started selling their beers in the 440ml cans maybe about a year and a half ago, and this means that they're able to export a lot more of their beers. But they now have a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and Lucas Munraid, who used to be the main brewer for All In Brewing, who are one of the numerous gypsy brewers operating around Gothenburg. But they open up the brewery every so often to host a bar, and they've just opened up a bar in Stockholm as well, so I'll need to check that out the next time I head up there. But as of April 2020, sorry, May 2020 we're in now, these guys have produced around 65 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But I do suspect it probably will have been a little bit more than that, because you know, I think Untappd's only been around a couple of years, so this brewery was around a little bit before that, of course. So there's probably a number of beers that Stigbergets have made that are not listed on there. But yeah, if you want to try the Stigbergets beers on tap in Gothenburg along with the OO stuff, I'd recommend you go to Barkino and the Hagabion's Cafe. I got into Barkino and got to have a few things there before, but I never got into the Hagabion's Cafe actually. So maybe next time I'll go earlier in the day and see about checking that out actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for just now. If you want to try some of their classic beers, of course, the Amazing Haze, the new and improved GBG Beer Week are the ones that you want to try, but they're releasing new IPAs, you know, pretty much at least one every month. The best beers I've had from these guys recently were the Queen and King of Hops that I had recently were very good, and the Ololeo last month as well was really very good actually. That's one of the best IPA. I think that might well have been the best IPA that I've had from Stigbergets so far actually. So yeah, I was very impressed with that one. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Very curious to see how this beer turns out. So yeah, that's all you need to know about Stigbergets. Check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you know, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages if you want to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on to this one then. So like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is a 9% American West Coast style double IPA, and it's hopped with Simcoe and Columbus. So Simcoe, of course, gives you some really nice, quite soft, passion fruity notes, and Columbus is that big, kind of spicy, bitter beast actually. So it should have a really nice kind of dankness to it actually. Columbus and Chinook were always the ones that you added to the West Coast IPAs to give you that big bitterness actually. So I'm really curious to see what this one has in store. Obviously my camera hates this the can because of the colour of it. I don't know if I tip it up a little bit like that, maybe it appears better. Maybe we can stick a bottle cap under this and just let it sit like that. There we go. Maybe should have done that earlier, but hey ho. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this guy has in store for us. Oh, you can smell the Simcoe as soon as you open this. This is going to be very nice, I think. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Hopefully this is as good a West Coast IPA as the New Englands recently have been from Stigbergets. But yeah, this one I think... Oh, it looks the part as well. It definitely looks the part. So with this one, as you can see, it's poured a kind of quite rich amber. It's not the darkest and most amber of West Coast IPAs that you're going to come across, but it's definitely leaning the right way, leaning more towards that orangey amber side of the spectrum. You can see there's a solid 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a steady stream of smaller bubbles up towards the bottom of the head. The head I think is just going to fade away to be a very thin foamy layer quite quickly. But yeah, this beer definitely looks the part. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see there is a slight degree of transparency to this one, but yeah, it has got a little bit of that lighter, hazy quality that you expect of a West Coast IPA. So certainly looks the part, not as dark as some of the ones you'll come across. I'm really hoping that this is somewhat similar to the Torpedo, or you know, something like this actually. I wonder what beer they've used to kind of inspire them for this. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we go on. Definitely looks the part in terms of a West Coast IPA. Ooh, that's pretty good actually, I have to say. So yeah, it smells very boozy, this one. First thing with the malt base is you can definitely pick up that 9% alcohol. There's no hiding that. It's got a nice little bit of a kind of biscuity note to it. You know, it smells like that boozy kind of McVitie's Digestive kind of sort of thing. A little bit like that almost caramel wafery type quality. It really has that kind of vibe to it, I have to say. So yeah, for me this one is I like that this one's quite it really is quite you get a lot of the dankness out of it. You can definitely pick up the Columbus in there. You get those big dank floral spicy notes out of it. Columbus is very, very distinctive on that. I mean, I love Columbus as a bittering hop, and just the spiciness that it gives you. If you mix Columbus and Chinook, you're really in for a bit of a treat with that. And as I say, the thing I've really been missing about these West Coast IPAs is the big, dank, 70, 80, 90 IBU bitterness that you get from these. That's what I've really missed about them. The new versions of the West Coast IPAs, they're nowhere near as bitter as what a West Coast IPA should be. But yeah, one of the best West Coast IPAs I had incidentally was the Hoppy 40th from Sierra Nevada. That was a beautiful beer, properly old school with a lovely malt base to it. But yeah, this one's got a really nice. This one really has a lovely kind of dankness to it, I have to say. I like how this goes together. You do get that big kind of biscuity quality out of it. You also get that nice kind of. You also get the. How do you say the? You get the nice kind of. You do get a little bit of the kind of pale malty qualities out of it as well, I have to say too. Sorry, thing going on with the camera control being a bit weird. But yeah, you do get some of these nice kind of dank. You do get some of these nice kind of just big boozy notes out of it. It's got a little bit of a kind of biscuity. It has got a little bit of sweetness to the biscuity side of it, but really it smells very boozy. There's a little bit of pale malt underneath that, but it doesn't quite have the big kind of thick, oily, caramelly notes that you might expect from the aroma. But yeah, you get a wee bit of earthiness out of this. You do get the big floral kind of spicy notes. There's a bit of lighter grassiness in there as well, but the green side of the hops most definitely leans towards that. It most definitely leans towards the kind of floral. That big kind of floral spicy sort of thing. There's a nice little bit of a kind of you do get some of the passion fruity notes from the Simcoe. It almost comes across as a bit more like a grapefruit because of the Columbus. I think the Columbus and the dankness of the Columbus is really making the Simcoe smell a bit darker than it actually is, but you do get some of the lighter tropical fruits with this one as well. So yeah, I like how this. I really like how this goes together. This has got a very, very nice. It really has a very nice aroma to it in my mind. I like how all of this works. So yeah, this one, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of it, but let's have a taste of this now and just see how we get on. This is one I'm very excited for. This is the Double Yellow Line, a 9% West Coast Double IPA from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden. A little bit more biscuity in things than what you might find from a West Coast IPA from America, but let's see how we get on with it. Slanja, skål. Yeah, it's a nice beer, I will say that. I like it, but this one isn't quite. I don't find it as bitter. It's not got the bitterness that you would normally get, I think, from a West Coast IPA, and it's not got the big kind of oily caramelly malt base to it either. This is more like a kind of new take on a West Coast IPA. It's a bit of a shame, actually, I have to say. But as as a beer, just if you consider it as a general IPA, it's good, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, for me, in terms of authenticity, if you're going to do a West Coast IPA, model it on Torpedo. Model it on the Torpedo. And in fairness, yeah, you get a wee bit of the bitterness out of this one. But I'd be very surprised if this one's more than about 50 IBUs. But a West Coast IPA is supposed to be, usually most of them are like 80. Some of them are even kind of pushing the 100 actually. So I mean, I have to admit, I feel a little bit let down with this one, because I was quite excited for it, really hoping, this is going to be a properly old school West Coast IPA. And it's, as a beer, if you just consider this as a regular beer, it's nice, and it's a nice tasting IPA, but it's not, to me, this is just not an original West Coast IPA. It's not caramelly enough, it's not bitter enough to be a West Coast IPA. So that is a bit, I have to admit, I feel quite let down with this one, to be honest with you. But as it stands, it is a good beer. It's just not a proper West Coast IPA. in my opinion. It needs more caramel to it, and it needs like 80, 90, 100 IBUs. It needs to be more bitter than it is. This is one of these ones where it's a new take on the West Coast IPA, and it's obviously it's this one's designed for people that you know, are used to so this, you know, to be balanced about this, this is one that's obviously been designed for people who have got into craft beer on the haze craze. This isn't for people who this isn't one that's made for people who've been drinking the West Coast IPAs since, you know, like the early 2010s sort of thing, you know. It's not an original, you know, it's not a kind of original West Coast IPA. This is more like a new take on the West Coast IPA in my mind. And like I say, just as if you just consider it as a beer, as an IPA, it's good. But when they're saying it's a West Coast IPA, you know, I would beg to differ on that, because it's not got quite the sweet caramelly backbone and things that you would kind of expect from that. It's just not. It's not. I don't find this bitter enough. So yeah, that's a little bit disappointing. But you know, it is. You know, it's just one of these things. It's a style that I like so much. I really love the West Coast IPAs, and you know, I loved the Sierra Nevada Hoppy 40th. I really loved that beer. And you know, that was, to me, that was like, you know, this is what a West Coast IPA is. This is exactly what you want. So yeah, I hope that Stigbergets go back and they look at this one. I hope they release more West Coast IPAs, but you know, it has to be, the malt base has to be sweeter, the bitterness has to be higher. That's the thing for me with this one. And I can understand why they've done this, because obviously, you know, the Stigbergets followers, the followers of their brewery, are people who are really into the kind of haze craze thing. So this is a beer that's maybe like a sort of halfway step, if you like. It's probably to introduce them to the idea, and then maybe if they're going to do these more regularly, they'll gradually you know, up the alcohol and things like that, actually. So you know, they'll maybe, you know, gradually up the bitterness and up the sweetness and things like that, actually. So yeah, that's the interesting thing. I was talking to Thomas Opent actually on the live stream about this the other day. People were complaining about these kind of West Coast IPAs, like the ones that were properly original and things like that. So yeah, it's quite an interesting point to make about this. But I feel this one, as I say, I think this is a kind of, it's almost like a half. I don't want to say half-hearted, because it's a little bit mean to say that, but it does seem that it's like a kind of half measure to going full out West Coast, this beer. But as a kind of straight up IPA, I will say I do like this as a beer. I just want, you know, I would just want something more from it being a West Coast IPA. But yeah, let's put the kind of complaining aside, if you like, and focus on the flavour of the beer itself. So yeah, in the middle of your palate with this one, you feel a little bit of that kind of pale malty quality, that blankets the middle of your tongue. On top of that, there is a good little bit of a kind of biscuity thing. In the very centre of your palate, you get a little bit of a sweet kind of caramel out of this one. But as I say, you know, a West Coast IPA, it should be a lot thicker, a lot more, I suppose in fairness, they have got a bit of the oiliness right there, but it should be more caramelly than it is. It shouldn't be this kind of lighter, wafery kind of caramelly. It shouldn't be this kind of caramel wafery sort of thing. It should be a big oily, sticky caramel that it should have. But yeah, the malt base is pretty straight up pale malt, and you've got a little bit of graininess towards the back of the palate, and then you get the oiliness more in the kind of middle central third of your tongue. Big sweet kind of oily caramel notes, and no, not really. There is a little bit of a sweet caramel in the very centre of the palate, and that's covering up the booze. But then as you move out towards the edge of the tongue, it's definitely a bit more kind of McVitie's digestive like and biscuity rather than anything else. So the malt base is pretty kind of straight up in this one. So yeah, it suits it to a degree. Yeah, it suits it to a degree. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, so back corners of the palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of it. That'll be the Columbus that's giving you that. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you can gradually feel the more spicy floral notes coming out of this one, that distinctive spice that you get from Columbus. So you get that as you reach the kind of front the front sides of your tongue there, and it does get more and more spicy as you reach the front corners of the palate. But it's not it's not a huge bitterness that you're getting out of this beer. But as you go round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and grassy. Some of the floral notes do creep round there a little bit, and there is a wee bit of that kind of grassy, zesty, citrusy note on the very kind of front edge of the tongue too. Behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And the Simcoe is quite interested in this one, I have to say. Yeah, the Simcoe's showing that lovely, kind of smooth, light, passion fruity note there. In the aroma I was picking up a bit of a darker grapefruity note as well. But really the fruity front part of the palate there, it really is pretty much just a nice, light, passion fruity note actually. I mean, it doesn't really have many complexities like mango or whatever. It's just pretty much straight up passion fruit on the front edge of your tongue, and then you get a little bit of a citrusy, zesty quality towards the front part of the palate as well. So I mean, overall, it's a very kind of straight up beer. This one, it doesn't kind of pull too many unusual punches and things like that. So yeah, as a kind of straight up IPA, I think it is quite nice. But as I say, if it's a West Coast IPA, you want more kind of sweet caramel in this one, and you definitely want more bitterness out of it. So there is a wee bit of dankness to this one, but at the same time, as I said, to be balanced about this, I can see why Stigbergets would do this as their first kind of West Coast type IPA, because it's that you wouldn't want the bitterness to scare people off almost. So I do understand why they've done this, but I would estimate that this beer, this has got to only be around 50 or maybe 60 IBUs, something like that. So it is a little bit heavier in its IBU count, but it's nowhere near the bitterness, at least, that I think you would get from something from Green Flash or Sierra Nevada or some of the other West Coast IPA breweries. It's not quite at that bitterness level, I have to say. So on that note, we should move on to the mouthfeel. So I would say with this beer, I'd say it's top end to mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It does have a bit of an oily mouthfeel to it, so that's one thing they have got right. They have got the oiliness level with this one, but it needs caramel. It definitely needs a bit more caramel to it, in my mind. So yeah, it has got that kind of oily mouthfeel that you expect. In terms of the hoppy bitterness, I think we're talking about 60 IBUs with this one. I don't find it overly bitter. The fruitiness, it does have the oily fruity character as well. So there's a lot of things that they have got right with this beer, in my mind. The mouthfeel I think is actually very good for the West Coast IPA. They've got the oiliness and things like that, and things right. It just needs to be more bitter. It needs a bit more caramel sweetness. That's the two things for me that this beer is lacking if it's going to classify itself as a kind of standout West Coast IPA. So yeah, I'm glad that they tried this. I am glad that they put this out there. So this is maybe going to actually cement the idea of a more bitter, kind of dank, kind of dank IPA in the ideas of people's minds. So I'm glad that the West Coast IPAs are starting to make a little bit of a comeback. I think this is a nice, I do think this is a really nice take on the. I think it's a nice beer, basically. I mean, I've complained about a few different aspects of it in quite a lot of detail, but I think as an IPA, it is a nice beer, and Stigbergets are not going to put a bad beer out there. These guys are a good brewery, don't get me wrong. It's just this one is just not quite as dank and bitter as you would expect from a West Coast IPA. It doesn't quite hit the same bitterness IBU count as you would normally expect from this style, and it's just not quite as sweet and caramelly. For me, actually, the whole biscuity, lighter thing is that's something that seems to have evolved a little bit more from the New England IPAs. I had one from Beer Bibliothèque recently. What was that called? I Can't Believe This Is Happening, or something like that. So I had a West Coast IPA from them as well, and it was the same. It was a little bit lighter and biscuity, but they got the bitterness right. if I remember rightly, and that was a really good beer as well. But this, as I say, a bit more caramel, a bit more bitterness, and it would be spot on. But there's a lot of positive points to take out of this beer, I have to say. So I like this one. I wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. I would drink it. I would like to try it on tap. But yeah, I'd like to see the next effort from Stigbergets on the West Coast front, just to be more bitter and to have a little bit more kind of sweetness to it to balance it out. Actually, one of my favourite beers that I had actually was Hop Sweat, and I forget whether that was Gamma or whether it was Dry and Bitter, but that was a beautiful West Coast IPA from one of the Danish breweries. So I'd love to see something similar from Stigbergets, but it's nice to see that they are going to do a West Coast IPA again, and I hope that they keep this out. One of the best West Coast IPAs you can get in Sweden, incidentally, I think, is the Mussels or the Evergreen from OO Brewing. Those two beers I think are very, very nice. I don't know if you can still get them, but that would be a tip for you. If you want a good West Coast IPA from a Swedish brewery, try Evergreen or Mussels from OO Brewing. They have that style pretty much down in my mind. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Double Yellow Line. A nice, this one's a really nice beer. It's kind of it's almost about 3/4 of the way, 80% of the way to being a properly old school West Coast IPA. A bit more caramel, a little bit more bitterness, and I think they would be right there with this one. So definitely cool to see Stigbergets have a go at this one, and I hope that this isn't the last West Coast IPA that we see from Stigbergets. So hopefully this puts the Stigbergets followers onto the path of the big bitter hoppy IPAs, and it shows you don't have to just be soft and juicy, you can also be big, bitter and bold. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Double Yellow Line, a 9% West Coast style double IPA from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden. Hopefully we see more of this style from them over the next little while. Slange, Skull, cheers. I hope you enjoyed this review. Check out my social media and check out Stigbergets Bryggeri as well. Cheers.